He wasn't a mind reader, but I punished him for it anyway. The sound of his phone hitting the coffee table wasn't a loud crash. It was a heavy, deliberate thud that cut through the silence of the apartment and stopped my heart cold. I looked up from my book, a fake, quizzical smile already forming on my lips, but it died when I saw his face. The screen was lit up facing me. My words. My stupid, flirty, pathetic words to Orion, his best friend, were glowing in the dim light of the living room. There was no denying it. The little heart emojis, the late night "you up" texts, the inside jokes that were supposed to be just between Rowan and me, now twisted and repurposed for someone else. He didn't raise his voice. That's what killed me. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before, and asked, his voice flat and dead, "Celia, what is this?" A hot, sick wave of panic washed over me, but something else rose up faster and stronger. Rage. A blinding, defensive fury. How dare he? How dare he stand there and look at me with those wounded eyes after weeks of barely looking at me at all? The apology that should have been there, the regret, it just wasn't. It was choked out by a tidal wave of resentment. Before I could even think, the words were spilling out of my mouth, venomous and sharp. "You pushed me to this, Rowan," I spat, the words tasting like acid. You were never here. You were always too busy, always lost in your own world. I needed someone. I needed to be seen. You pushed me right to him. For a split second, I saw it, a flash of real, gut-wrenching hurt in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. A shudder came down. The warmth he always had, the light in his gaze, it just died. It was replaced by something terrifyingly calm, something utterly empty. He just stared at me, and in that silence, I felt the entire foundation of our world crack. To understand why those words were my first line of defense, you have to understand Rowan. Or, at least, the version of Rowan I had been living with for the past year. He's a field geologist, a job that sounds romantic until you realize it means he's married to rocks, to sediment layers, to the silent history of the earth. His work takes him away, not just physically to remote sites for weeks at a time, but mentally. Even when he was home, his mind was a million miles away, charting fault lines while I was sitting right next to him, starving for a connection. It wasn't that he was mean or cruel in an obvious way. He was worse. He was a master of passive aggression, a silent artist of emotional neglect. I'd try to talk to him about feeling lonely, about needing more from him, and he wouldn't argue. He'd just give me this tired, patient look, the one you give a toddler having a tantrum. "Celia, I'm exhausted," he'd sigh, turning back to his laptop where he'd be mapping seismic data. The conversation would just die. He wouldn't validate my feelings, but he wouldn't fight me on them either. He'd just let them hang in the air, unanswered, making me feel needy and insane. This wasn't a one-time thing, it was the texture of our life. I remember getting a huge promotion at work a few months ago. I was ecstatic, practically vibrating with excitement. I called him, but he was in an area with bad reception. So I waited. I bought a bottle of our favorite champagne and waited all evening. When he finally got back to the hotel and called me, I blurted out the news. There was a pause, and then he said, "Oh, that's great, Cel. Hey, you won't believe the Paleozoic strata I found today." And just like that, my moment was over. It was buried under a layer of ancient rock. He wasn't trying to be hurtful. He was just so completely absorbed in his own world that mine barely registered. The tragic part is, it wasn't always like this. In the beginning, he was the most attentive person I'd ever met. He'd remember tiny details I'd told him weeks before. He'd listen to my work stories with genuine fascination. He was the one who made me feel seen for the first time in my life. That's what made his withdrawal so much worse. It felt like a deliberate retraction of his affection, a slow, painful starvation. I remember our 3rd anniversary. I'd spent all day making his favorite meal, a ridiculously complicated beef Wellington. I lit candles, put on the music from our first date. I even wore the dress he said he loved. He came home late, dropped his dusty field bag by the door, and gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek that smelled like dirt and exhaustion. He sat at the table, and for the entire meal, he was answering work emails on his phone. Not urgent, life-or-death emails, just emails. "Rowan, can you please put that away? Just for tonight. I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. He looked up, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes before he smoothed it over. Just a second, Sel. This is important. It was never just a second. The beef Wellington got cold. The candles burned down. The silence in the room grew heavy and suffocating. I eventually got up and started clearing the plates, the clinking of the silverware against the porcelain sounding like gunshots in the quiet. He didn't even seem to notice. Later that night in bed, he rolled over and tried to initiate sex, as if that was the solution, the checkbox he needed to tick for relationship maintenance. When I flinched away, he let out that signature sigh, a quiet, disappointed breath that said everything. It said, I try and you're still unhappy. What more do you want from me? He never understood. I didn't want grand gestures. I just wanted him to be present. But asking for that felt like begging for scraps. His silence, his emotional retreat, was a quiet, constant message. My needs were too much, my emotions were a burden. It triggered something ugly in me, something from a long time ago. A deep-seated fear of being invisible, of being abandoned in plain sight. And the more he pulled away, the more I felt that old panic rising, that desperate need to do something, anything, to make someone see me. His neglect didn't feel passive to me. It felt like an active choice he was making every single day. A choice to leave me alone, even when he was right there beside me. The final straw was his trip to Alaska. A 6-week geological survey in some remote, godforsaken corner of the state with intermittent satellite phone access. 6 weeks. The night before he left, I tried one last time, my voice cracking with a desperation I hated. Please, Rowan, don't go, not now. Can't you see we're falling apart? He was packing, folding his thermal underwear with methodical precision. He didn't even look at me. It's my career, Celia, he said, his tone flat and pragmatic, as if I were a child questioning why the sky is blue. This project is a huge opportunity. It pays for this apartment, for our life. What do you want me to do, quit? He completely missed the point. I wasn't attacking his job, I was begging for him, for us. But to him, my emotional plea was just another logistical problem to be solved. And since it couldn't be, it was dismissed. The first 2 weeks after he left were a special kind of hell. The silence in the apartment was deafening, a physical presence that mocked me. That's when Orion stepped in. He didn't just call, he showed up at my door with coffee and pastries one morning. Figured you might be going stir-crazy, he said with an easy smile. The rock whisperer abandoned you for his true love, so I'm here on a rescue mission. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. He didn't flinch. He just came in, put the coffee on the counter, and gave me a hug. It wasn't a romantic hug, just a solid, comforting one. And I just stood there in his arms and cried. That broke the dam. He took me out for a drink that night, to a loud, crowded bar where I could feel the bass in my bones. For the first time in months, I felt like a person again, not just a problem to be managed. I started venting, a torrent of frustration and loneliness pouring out of me. I fully expected him to defend Rowan, to make excuses for his best friend. But he didn't. He just listened, his eyes focused on mine, and when I was done, he shook his head slowly. I love the guy, Celia, but he's a black hole of emotional awareness. He has no idea how lucky he is. Hearing that from him, it was like a drug. It was the validation I had been craving for years. It made me feel sane. One drink turned into weekly dinners. Weekly dinners turned into him coming over to fix my leaky faucet and staying to watch a movie. We'd sit on the couch, a respectable distance between us, but the space felt charged. The line between friend and something more blurred so gradually I didn't even notice it until I was already on the other side. The text started as memes and jokes, then evolved. Good morning, hope you have a great day. Thinking of you. He'd ask my opinion on his design projects, making me feel like my thoughts mattered. I knew it was wrong. There was this one night, we were cooking pasta in my kitchen, laughing about something stupid. He reached over to wipe a smudge of flour off my cheek, and his fingers lingered for a fraction of a second too long. The air went still. We both knew we were standing on a cliff's edge, but neither of us stepped back. That night, I got a rare, crackly call from Rowan. He sounded exhausted but said, I miss you, Cel. A wave of guilt so powerful it made me nauseous washed over me. I almost told him everything. But then he immediately added, "The core samples we drilled today were unbelievable, though." And just like that, the guilt vanished, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. He didn't miss me. He missed the comfort of knowing I was there. From that moment on, I stopped fighting it. The relationship with Orion was an emotional affair, pure and simple. We never slept together, never even kissed. It was all in the words, the lingering glances, the shared understanding that we were in this little bubble, a secret world built just for two. I told myself I deserved it. I framed it not as a betrayal, but as a survival mechanism. Rowan had left me in an emotional desert, and Orion was offering me water. How could I possibly be blamed for drinking? Which brings us back to that moment. Me, standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs, the accusation hanging in the air like smoke. You pushed me right to him. Rowan didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He didn't do any of the things I had braced myself for. In a way, that was so much worse. The fury I was expecting would have been something I could fight against, a fire I could meet with my own. But his reaction was something I had no defense for. He just stood there for a long, silent moment, his eyes searching my face. It felt like he was looking right through me, seeing all the ugly, resentful parts I tried to keep hidden. The flicker of hurt I had seen was gone, replaced by a profound and terrifying clarity. It was the look of a man seeing something for the very first time and realizing he had been a fool not to see it sooner. Finally, he nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "Okay," he said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "I understand." That was it. I understand. Not how could you, or we're over. Just that calm, chilling acceptance. Before I could process it, he turned and walked into our bedroom. I followed him, my own anger still simmering, ready for the argument that was surely coming. "What, that's all you have to say?" I demanded, my voice shrill. He didn't answer. He was pulling a worn-out duffel bag from the top of the closet, a bag I hadn't seen him use since his college backpacking trips. He started packing, not with the frantic energy of someone storming out, but with a quiet, methodical purpose. A few t-shirts, a pair of jeans, his toothbrush. It was like he was just packing for another field trip. For a horrifying second, I thought this was just another one of his passive-aggressive maneuvers, a grand, silent treatment. "Oh, so you're just going to leave?" I taunted, trying to get a rise out of him, trying to provoke the fight I knew how to navigate. "Just run away like you always do." He zipped the bag shut and walked past me, heading for the door. He didn't even look at me. He paused with his hand on the doorknob, and for a moment I thought he might turn around, that the dam would finally break. He did turn, but his face was a mask. "We're done, Celia," he said, the words as simple and solid as the rocks he studied. "It's over." And then he opened the door, walked out, and closed it gently behind him. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't a slam. It was a clean, quiet, and absolutely final cut. For the first hour, I was just numb, paralyzed by the sheer finality of it. I kept staring at the door, expecting it to fly open, expecting him to come back, yelling, crying, anything but that, nothingness. But the door stayed shut. The silence he left behind was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Then, the panic set in. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to call him. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I sent a text, a long, rambling paragraph that was equal parts fury and fear. No response. I checked his social media. He hadn't blocked me, not yet, but it felt like a countdown. My next thought was Orion. I needed him to tell me what was happening to fix this. I called him. Straight to voicemail. Another text. "Rowan knows. He left. Call me now." The message stayed there, delivered but unread. The two men who had occupied every corner of my emotional landscape for months had both vanished into thin air. That's when I completely fell apart. I called my best friend Maya, my voice a choked, hysterical mess. I sobbed the whole story out to her. The fight, the texts, Rowan walking out. And then, clinging to the one piece of justification I had, I repeated the words that had started it all. "And I told him, Maya. I told him he pushed me to it. He was never here. He made me so lonely. What did he expect was going to happen?" I waited for her to agree, to comfort me, to tell me Rowan was being a cold-hearted bastard, and that I was right to feel the way I did. But all I got was silence, a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. It was so long I thought the call had dropped. "Maya, are you there?" "I'm here," she finally said, her voice unnervingly calm. It was her "I'm about to tell you a hard truth" voice, and I instinctively braced myself. "Celia," she began, and her tone was gentle but firm, like a doctor about to deliver a bad diagnosis. "I love you, you know I do, but you are so wrong about this." The words hit me like a slap. "What? What are you talking about? You know what he was like." "I know he was distant," she conceded. "I know he could be a terrible communicator, but he was also a decent man who loved you. And you had an emotional affair with his best friend. And when he found out, instead of apologizing, you blamed him for it. You took his biggest insecurity, that his job was hurting your relationship, and you turned it into a weapon to justify your betrayal. What did you expect him to do, Celia? Thank you for pointing out his flaws." Every word was a nail in the coffin of my self-pity. She wasn't yelling. She was just laying out the facts, and the simple, brutal logic of it all dismantled my entire narrative. For the first time, I saw my actions not through the blurry lens of my own hurt, but through his eyes. And the view was horrifying. Weeks have passed. The apartment feels cavernously empty now, filled with the ghosts of a life I torched with my own hands. I'm out with Maya and a few other friends at some loud, trendy bar downtown. I'm trying. God, am I trying. I'm wearing a new dress, I've had my hair done, and I've been nursing the same gin and tonic for 2 hours, laughing a little too loudly at jokes that aren't that funny. Honestly, it's a relief, I say to Maya, pitching my voice over the music. She's giving me a look, a mixture of pity and skepticism. "No, I'm serious, I feel free. No more walking on eggshells, no more begging for a scrap of attention. I'm better off without him." I take a defiant sip of my drink, a perfect performance of a woman who has moved on. I'm the tough one, the survivor. He's the one who couldn't handle the truth. But it's all a lie. A fragile, paper-thin facade. Later, I excuse myself to go to the restroom. The thumping bass of the music fades as the door closes behind me, replaced by the sterile hum of the ventilation fan. I lean against the cool tile of the wall, the forced smile finally dropping from my face. My reflection in the mirror is a stranger, a tired, hollowed-out version of myself. The bright lipstick looks garish, the eyes are puffy. My hand moves automatically, pulling my phone from my clutch. My thumb hovers over my contacts, then presses down on his name. Rowan. His picture is gone, replaced by a gray, generic silhouette. I haven't been blocked here, not on the phone itself. It's a tiny, pathetic window of connection that he probably just forgot to close. I scroll up through our old messages, a masochistic journey through a life that no longer exists. "Love you, miss you, can't wait to be home." Each one is a tiny paper cut on my heart. My thumb hovers over the delete button. I should do it, I know I should. It would be the first real step toward moving on, toward accepting the consequences of my own actions. It would be the healthy, adult thing to do. But I can't. My finger won't move. Because deleting his number feels like admitting it's really over. It feels like letting go of the last, stupid, infinitesimal shred of hope that he might, one day, call. I lock the phone, shoving it back into my purse. I take a deep breath, splash some cold water on my face, and check my reflection one last time. I rearrange my features back into the mask of indifference, the smile that doesn't reach my eyes. Then I push the door open and walk back out into the noise and the lights, ready to tell another joke about how much better off I am.